Coming up today, it's too close to call in the US presidential election. We have all the latest results from a very tight race between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Korea's finance ministry looks to stabilize the local market as the world closely watches the results of the US presidential election. The government says it will take the necessary actions to curb market volatility if need be. Plus, with the abuse of power scandal still bubbling, Korea's opposition bloc speaks with one voice, saying President Park must hand over a sizable amount of control over state affairs to the next Prime Minister. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Wednesday, the 9th of November. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Mark Broom. Where else do we start but with the US presidential election? The polls have now closed in most states around the country, and the results are flying in this hotly contested battle for the White House. For the latest, we cross over to our Kwon Jang-oh, who's with us. Jang-oh, how's it looking?
Well, Mark, polls have just closed in 6 states, including Iowa, Montana and Nevada, meaning voting has ended in 46 out of the 50 states. And the projected results have also been announced in 27 of them. Now, so far, according to CNN's projections, Donald Trump is leading Hillary Clinton by 136 to 104 electoral votes. Now, the magic number for the electoral votes is 270. The candidate who passes that number will become the next president of the United States. Now, the electoral votes are divvied up among the 50 states, as you can see here. Now, because of the different time zones, polls opened and closed first on the East Coast states, and many of them have already been called. The first victories went to Trump in the traditionally Republican states of Indiana and Kentucky. But Clinton quickly picked up wins in New Jersey, Maryland and Massachusetts. But the first big result of the day is coming out of Florida. Now, it seems that vote is going right down to the wire, and Trump is currently winning with 49% of the vote, with a margin of only about 130,000 votes. It's a state with the third largest number of electoral votes at 29, and it looks like it could be a significantly big win for Trump. Now, the main race itself is still too early to call. That was the first of the battleground states, and there are still several more up for grabs, such as Ohio, Pennsylvania, colored here on this map in yellow. And the projections aren't out yet, even though several of the polls have closed more than 2 hours ago. The last polls closed just under an hour now on the West Coast in states like California, Alaska and Hawaii. And after that, we'll have a clearer picture of who will become the next president of the United States.
Let's get some perspective from the United States now. We have J.P. Lawrence, a reporter from the San Antonio News in Texas, on the line. Thank you for joining us, J.P.
Hello, Mark.
So the early results from the presidential race are pouring in, but we now know that the Republicans have retained control of the House of Representatives. Can you tell us what that might mean for the next president?
Well, Mark, I can tell you that depending on the two options, it can be either a Republican majority at a credible amount of levels of government, or a very divided government with Hillary Clinton at the top. If Donald Trump wins the presidency, retains the House and retains the Senate, is able to put in a Republican or a conservative-leaning Supreme Court justice in, that combined with state governorships across the land and state legislative wins across the land would create a partisan majority unlike any this country has seen since the FDR days during the Great Depression. If Hillary Clinton wins and faces a divided House of Representatives, Senate split, perhaps she will win the Senate. In that case, perhaps they'll be able to put in a Supreme Court justice. And we can have 4 years of divided rule, and what will most likely happen, as is the pattern in presidencies, is in 2 years, during the next midterm elections, there will be a bloodbath for the Democratic Party.
And tell us about the latest in the race for the Senate then. What is the significance of having control of the Senate?
Well, having the control of the Senate is going to be very important for the Supreme Court confirmations that may or may not be coming up. We'll see. The most recent news now is that Evan Baugh, who is seen as a good bet to win a Senate race in Indiana, has been declared out. There's a couple of other races that are interesting. One of them is Cha Eun-taek, who is a very powerful armed and very powerful defense senator up in the northeast. If she goes down to Maggie Hassan, that would be a big coup indeed. I think I'm good on that.
Okay, so JP, this campaign has been extremely bitter and has divided America down the lines. What's the general sentiment of Americans over there?
Well, I can tell you that this has been not just a divisive, bitter campaign, but also a heavily media-saturated one. I can tell you that a lot of people in my industry and a lot of people that I've been speaking to, they have a hard time unplugging at the end of the day. They just stay connected the whole day to this soap opera of a race, and it just makes them worse for it. A lot of people have told me that they have this, on both sides, they have this sense of doom, sense of unease of how this is all going. We'll see how it ends up at tomorrow.
Yeah, we have to wait and see what the reaction of the public is to the result, however the cards fall. Just one more thing before you go, JP. When do you expect to see the final results called, and when will we know the next president of the United States in your estimation?
Well, I'm currently here in the San Antonio Express newsroom. We have an all hands on deck almost here. And I can tell you that that we have veteran staff here who remember in 2000 when it went down to the wire and then past the wire. A couple of the editors here they recall the days when they had to they stayed past 2, thought that something would happen at 2 a.m. Eastern. It didn't. They stayed till 7 a.m. the next day. Didn't happen. That was that Florida recount during that year dragged the process out a lot. And here in the newsroom, there's a lot of institutional memory and the fear of that repeating.
Well, thank you, JP, for that analysis there. And this election certainly is turning into quite the wild ride. We are still seeing the results filter out. Now, before we turn our focus to the future with the new occupant in the White House, we'll first like to take a look back on the campaign that was. The 2016 campaign was one of the most heated in recent U.S. election history. And our Oh Jung-hee has a wrap-up.
Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton announced her second run for the White House back in April 2015, and Donald Trump declared his candidacy just 2 months later in June. Hillary Clinton, who has spent 31 years in public service, came into the campaign promising to unite the nation, fight for equality, and ensure Americans were stronger together. She promised to expand affordable health care, institute equal pay, and increase the federal minimum wage, while also promising to get rid of unfair trade deals. The current president and First Lady Barack and Michelle Obama have provided their full support, using their popularity to campaign on behalf of her at rallies across the country. On the last day of campaigning on Monday, Clinton reiterated her belief in America's promise.
I believe America's best days are still ahead of us. Because when your kids and your grandkids ask you in the future what you did in 2016 when everything was on the line, you'll be able to say you voted for a stronger, fairer, better America where we build bridges, not walls.
Donald Trump, who was already a well-known reality TV show star before he became a presidential candidate, offered to make America great again, using the slogan that would become like a mantra for his America First policies that would prioritize the interests of the American people. Trump has criticized his rival as corrupt and the current administration has failed, saying that tens of thousands of jobs have been lost and the country's economic infrastructure weak. At a rally in Pennsylvania on the last day of his campaigning on Monday, Trump told his supporters that the ballot they cast the next day would be, quote, the greatest vote they ever cast in their lifetimes.
You have one magnificent chance to beat this corrupt system and to deliver justice for every forgotten man, every forgotten woman, and every forgotten child in this nation. It will be the greatest vote you ever cast in your lifetime. And yes, we will make America great again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
The past year and a half has not been smooth sailing for the candidates, and both have had their share of controversy. Trump was caught on tape making lewd comments about women, and several women came forward to accuse him of sexual assault. He caused a firestorm of controversy after he said in the last presidential debate that the election was rigged. Clinton has been dogged by questions about her health, criticism for her basket of deplorables comment, and questions about her trustworthiness related to the FBI's investigation into her use of a private email server while she was Secretary of State. On Election Day, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump both joined the general public at their local polling stations in New York, where they will be later when the election results are called. Until then, the votes are being counted, and the year-long race is now about to wrap up. 오정희, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's finance ministry says the government will work to maintain market stabilization regardless of who wins the U.S. presidential election. During a finance-related meeting on Wednesday morning, Vice Finance Minister Cha Eun-taek said that although it's slightly early, excessive volatility in the market isn't desirable and that the government will take action to curb volatility if need be. He added that exchange rates will be affected no matter who wins. Trade protectionism shown by the two candidates is seen as a potential downward risk to the global economic recovery. Now, Korea's stocks opened higher on Wednesday, with the benchmark Kospi starting above 2,000, up 4.7 points, and while the tech-heavy Kosdaq began up 2.34 points. Now, people are wondering what impact the result of the U.S. presidential election could have on South Korea. The government has made clear, though, that ties with Washington will only improve no matter who wins the White House, and that diplomatic policy won't be undergoing many changes. Gwon-swa tells us more.
No matter who wins the White House, he or she won't steer Seoul and Washington's robust diplomatic strategies too far off course. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry told Arirang TV Wednesday that regardless of the election result, there won't be a big change in the standard policies regarding foreign affairs that the two allies share. A day earlier, the South Korean government made clear that relations between Seoul and Washington would not suffer a disruption, no matter who becomes the next president of the United States. In fact, Seoul's foreign ministry spokesperson Cho Eun-taek said that the government is certain that the South Korea-U.S. alliance will only develop further.
For the bilateral relationship to move forward, the government will work in close cooperation with the incoming administration for the swift establishment of relations with no setbacks, and will do all we can to continue existing policies.
According to the spokesman, Seoul will push ahead with measures to work with the new U.S. administration through a network it has been building with the campaigns of both Democratic Party Hillary Clinton and Republican Party Donald Trump. Cho added that all usual procedures, including a phone conversation between South Korea's president and the new U.S. president, will be followed. In general, the consensus in South Korea is that a Clinton victory won't have a negative impact on Seoul's relationship with Washington, especially because she appears to support similar North Korea policies. Clinton is said to be considering stronger sanctions on Pyongyang and has emphasized the importance of the U.S. military presence in South Korea, whereas her rival Donald Trump has said on various occasions that America's allies should pay more for the U.S. troops' presence or defend themselves. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has reportedly visited a military unit, his visit coming around the time of the U.S. presidential elections. The North state-run Korean Central News Agency said Wednesday that Kim inspected a sub-unit of the Korean People's Army, ordering troops to be ready for combat and improve training methods necessary for victory. It didn't reveal the location or timing of his visit. Kim's visit comes a matter of days after the news agency reported he inspected a special operations military unit. The leaders of South Korea's main and minor opposition parties met this morning to discuss ways to resolve the Cha Eun-taek scandal that has crippled state affairs. This meeting comes as President Park indicated that she would hand control of the cabinet to a prime minister recommended by the National Assembly. She did so on Tuesday. For more, we connect to our Ji Myung-gil. So, Myung-gil, what can you tell us about the outcome of this meeting?
Mark, well, unfortunately, the three parties refused to cooperate with President Park Geun-hye, although she requested yesterday to recommend a new prime minister candidate, giving in to the opposition's resistance to her earlier appointment of Kim Byung-jun. The opposition heads agreed that the only way to deal with the fallout from the scandal gripping the nation is for President Park to relinquish control over affairs of state and hand full authority to the new prime minister, effectively signaling her resignation. They slammed the president for not fully clarifying the scope of authority she would give to the new prime minister. They also said she was trying to evade responsibility with some stopgap measures and urged the president to give up her ruling party membership. Meanwhile, concerns about a split in the ruling Saenuri party have continued to intensify as a factional conflict over how to handle the political scandal involving President Park's confidant spirals further. Lawmakers from the non-pro-Park faction are pushing for a separate leadership within the party to purge the pro-Park wing. Mark?
Thank you, Myung-gil. Now, President Park Geun-hye has given the Parliament the authority to choose the next Prime Minister, as we just heard, but there's still a long way to go in defining the Prime Minister's role and responsibilities. The President's Senior Secretary for Politics made another visit to the National Assembly again this morning to sit down with Assembly Speaker Jung Se-gyun and further explain the President's stance on the new Prime Minister's role. The Presidential Office of Chung Wha-dae said all possibilities are being considered, including allowing the new Prime Minister to set up his or her own cabinet, and that everything should be discussed at a meeting between the President and political party leaders, which the top office is trying to arrange in the coming days. Now, a key figure in the ongoing Cha Eun-taek scandal, Cha Eun-taek, was detained last night and questioned until this morning. He's expected to undergo another round of questioning today, and prosecutors are likely to request an arrest warrant for him within the next 48 hours. Lee Ji-won has more.
State prosecutors questioned music video producer Cha Eun-taek, who has close ties to Cha Eun-taek, for around 4 hours on Tuesday night. He is currently being held in a jail cell. Cha had been in China since the scandal broke and was detained upon his arrival at Incheon International Airport. Speaking to reporters at the airport, Cha said he was sorry for causing such a stir and vowed to reveal everything during the prosecutor's investigation. He also admitted to knowing former key presidential secretary An Jong-bum, but didn't answer a question about his ties to Cha Eun-taek, the key figure in the ongoing abuse of power scandal rattling the nation. Cha is believed to have been deeply involved in the establishment and management of two government-linked foundations that were controlled by Cha, who allegedly forced Korean conglomerates to donate huge sums of money to the organizations. He's also suspected of embezzling funds from an advertising company he ran and is accused of attempting to extort shares from a separate advertising firm formerly affiliated with steelmaker POSCO. Cha is expected to undergo another round of questioning Wednesday, and prosecutors are likely to request an arrest warrant for Cha before the 48-hour emergency detention period expires on Thursday night. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea and Japan are inching closer to forging a bilateral military intelligence sharing pact aimed at better countering North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. They will hold their second round of working-level talks on the matter in Seoul on this Wednesday to discuss signing the General Security and Military Information Agreement. They came close to inking the pact 4 years ago, but the final signing was aborted due to negative public sentiment in South Korea. However, the two sides announced they were reopening talks late last month. The first meeting was held in Tokyo last Tuesday. The pact will enable the two to formulate a more effective response to North Korea's growing threats. Turning now to South Korea's latest job figures, and job growth remained sluggish last month. This as Korea's corporate restructuring drive takes a toll on the manufacturing sector, especially in regions where the country's major shipbuilders are located. Kim Min-ji breaks down the numbers.
Korea's job market remained sluggish in October. Statistics Korea says the country added 278,000 new jobs last month from a year ago, bringing the total number of employed to almost 26.6 million. The figure has stayed below the 300,000 mark for the second straight month. The ministry attributes the feeble growth to the government's ongoing corporate restructuring drive, which has taken a toll on the country's manufacturing sector. Jobs in the manufacturing industry have fallen for 4 straight months.
Jobs in the manufacturing sector fell 115,000 in October, expanding from the previous month. Although the overall figure job growth improved slightly on month, the corporate restructuring drive and slump in exports continues to weigh on the manufacturing industry.
Despite job growth in the retail, accommodation and dining sectors picking up, boosted by increased domestic spending and tourists due to the country's sales event last month, it wasn't enough to prop up the job market. In fact, the country's jobless rate sits at 3.4%, up 0.3 percentage points from last year. It also marks the highest figure for the month of October since 2005. For young people, the situation wasn't any better, with the youth jobless rate at 8.5% last month, the highest for the month of October in 17 years. Prospects aren't bright down the road with lingering uncertainties. For one, the fallout from the ongoing corporate restructuring push is expected to expand, and an anti-graft law that took effect stands as a downside risk. The government has vowed to make sure the budget supplement is implemented smoothly to breathe life into the economy and in turn improve job market conditions. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Okay, that's where we're going to leave it on this Wednesday lunchtime here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for watching. We will be back throughout the day with more newscasts. We'll have all the latest on the US presidential election as well in our next newscast at 2 p.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.